make your day richer than it was before. Got some good times knocking upon your front door. It's the Richard Wilmore Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Richard Wilmore.
I'm so excited, Dominic, to talk to you today because I feel like you have had the job that every young artist wants, and you got to work for Disney and Disney Animation.
Yes,
And
Disney.
I'm
Yep.
jealous.
For
and
11 years.
Yes, and I'm not an artist at all in that capacity, but when I was reading all of your bio stuff, that you worked on Tarzan,
Among others.
which, and just, hold on, this is not staged at all, this was here, but I have,
Oh, shit. What the heck?
that's the Tarzan, it's a bank. It doesn't work
What?
anymore because it's old, but it's
Wow.
from the movie So
awesome.
my whole show is like based on the old Rosie O'Donnell show, right? And I love Rosie.
Oh, right, okay.
Yes, see, now it's all making sense.
Right,
and
which
so-
was that period of time. I mean, I was at Disney for 11 years in the 90s, and that
Yeah.
was, neck and neck with us. It's funny you would bring, I know we have limited time, it's funny you would bring that in because I did a lot of the merch, totally independent of my job at Disney Feature Animation. I freelanced and did like the McDonald's, Lion King, Happy Meal. Like I did a lot of
Wow.
crazy merchandising stuff, even a board game based on Lion King.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I would do it freelance, but then they would bring it back into my building to get it approved by the powers that be. It was just an ironic mess. But I've never seen that Tarzan board game. Is that a game?
That is a bank.
Yeah, bank. I've never seen
And
that.
yeah, there's probably other stuff around here that I'll grab it later. But tell everybody about your time at Disney, what you did there, what you were working on, and also kind of like was that like a pinch myself, am I dreaming time of your life that like, I mean, you got to do some really great stuff there.
Yes, all of the above. I mean, I basically had interned there halfway through school. So I studied illustration at Art Center College of Design, and then I had interned there between fourth and fifth term, which is about halfway. And it was, a dream job. I made more money as an intern than I ever had at Del Taco or Aaron Brothers or any of the sort of retail jobs I'd had. So they treated us like princes. We got to go to the zoo and draw animals, watch screenings of classic films. I was mentored by Glenn Keane, if anybody knows who that is. And Ruben Aquino, who actually did Ursula. They had just finished Little Mermaid, so my mentor had been the lead animator on Ursula. So of course I was in heaven as a 19 or 20-year-old. So anyway, I was offered a job at the end of the internship, and then when I graduated, I took them up on it, and I'm really condensing this, but Lion King was my first film, then Pocahontas, Hunchback, Tarzan, Little Match Girl, and One by One. And the latter two are short films that were intended to be part of the next Fantasia, which never happened. So they just sort of released them theatrically with a feature in one case, and then on DVD in the other. So 11 years, it was heaven, Paris, for several months on Tarzan. So yes, it was a dream job. And a lot of people have horror stories about Disney, but I will go to my grave saying, within feature animation, maybe not other divisions, but the artists were treated very, very well. And I have pretty much nothing but fond memories.
I mean, it's probably hard to say, like, what did you learn there? Sum it up in less than 2 minutes, but I can't imagine the probably quick pace of learning at Disney, right? It's like the best of the best.
Believe it or not, though, more television animation is known for just crank it out, man. And feature was a little different. On my first production background. That's what I did, by the way. I painted production backgrounds. They're one of the few departments where your work is actually seen on the screen untouched as you painted it. As you can imagine, everything's composited. So many departments get their hands on it. It's very rewarding to be a background painter because your work, in theory, was untouched on the screen. So anyway, so I trained for 6 months, and yeah, it was intensive. I learned a lot. But my first actual production background, I kind of froze up a little bit because it suddenly, this was going to be in the film. And I did say, well, how long, do I have on this? Should I be worried about a deadline? And the answer was, maybe on your second film, we'll start to worry about deadlines. And for now, it's just quality. And so it's not a fast pace. It's like, we want to get it right. And it's very different. And I've learned in other cultures and other scenarios like television animation.
Yeah, I suppose now that I say that, like, it takes them years to release films there because everything has to be so meticulous, right?
Yeah, well, anything can be in development for 20 years.
Yeah.
That's visual development and story development. And I always heard that myth, but then it turned out to be true. Frozen was called Snow Queen when I was there. And literally, the Brizzi brothers, who had a studio in Paris, and we sort of bought it out, which is typical Disney. And they came on board with us at Disney. They were developing it as Snow Queen before I left, which was 2001, I think. So all these years later, it became Frozen. So I'm testament to the fact that, yes, things can be in development for 20 years. But then pre-production is 18 months and production is 18 months. So in the case of Lion King and Tarzan both, I was on for 3 years, all said and done. That does take a lot of, stamina to remain focused for 3 years.
I was going to say that has to be exhausting.
It's a great job. I mean, I'm so lucky to have been able, I wasn't flipping burgers. I wasn't at the DMV. I did count my blessings. And to go back to something you said earlier, I do remember the moment where I thought, I'm in arguably the most, militarily anyway, powerful country on the planet, and arguably one of the biggest sort of corporate entities, for good or bad. It has a creepy ring to it, right? But one of the biggest American institutions in the world. And then Lion King, we had no idea it was going to do well at the box office. It was the first original treatment that we'd ever put into production. But then when that exploded, it was a full circle moment. I mean, I went back to my high school and the choir that I was vocal music president of back in the 80s, which actually became the school that they researched for Glee in terms of the show choir program. Anyway, I got to see my choir that I was president of in the 80s now performing the songs from Lion King. That was a real full circle moment.
That's so cool. Lion King was the first movie I ever saw in a theater.
Oh my God, you're an embryo.
Yeah, well, I was born
it feels like yesterday to me, and then I'll be in an Uber, and a grown man will say, "Oh, it's my favorite movie as a kid." It's like,
I remember kindergarten graduation, I got the VHS copy of The Little Mermaid, and I was so excited. Like, that's what I wanted.
Yeah, Little Mermaid, I was in college, believe it or not. And I do remember I scuba dive and I snorkel, so that was arguably the beginning of what they call the Renaissance of animation, right? Renaissance of Disney animation. And I would agree with that. I got in at a really good time. They had just finished Little Mermaid. Rescuers Down Under was in production, and Beauty and the Beast was in development.
That's so... It's like, like that golden time, like the perfect time to be there when it was just magical, I guess.
My first film that I recall seeing in a theater happened to have been the drive-in, but my dad was really smart because at that time Disney was re-releasing the classics every 10 years, theatrically. After Eisner started just squandering them on DVD and video, that was not the case. But for many decades, they would re-release them every 10 years. So I was the right age to catch Jungle Book in the theater, 101 Dalmatians, Sword in the Stone, classics like that. So I did realize once I was working at Disney, it was a big part of my childhood. And 101 Dalmatians, same thing, was the first film I remember seeing theatrically. And I thought Cruella de Vil was our family friend Luella because she smoked a long cigarette and wore fur coats. And I did not know. That's how young I was. I thought everyone had an animated version of themselves.
That's funny. That's so funny. Were you always a creative child?
Well, I joked that I came out of the womb with a paintbrush in my hand, and who knows what's innate, right, and what's nurture. But I would say all three of my siblings, and I are very creative, and I do credit my mom for nurturing that in our household. My dad is very blue collar and practical, but he's also very creative in ways he wasn't able to express. So who knows what's innate, But I would say it was definitely encouraged in my house, and it was a crazy creative atmosphere. My mom owned a costume shop, and she was a cosmetologist, and she would costume, theatrical productions, and there would be costumes just lying around on our couches in the living room. It was wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, as like the young gay kid, what a dream that would have been. I was not doing that. So I'm very jealous. Yeah. You're working a ton still. You're still writing. You're still I want to talk about everything that you're doing because I don't know how you keep track of it. I have 9 calendars for what I'm doing, so I don't know how you're doing it. But can we talk about The Seeker?
I would love to. Yeah. Well, look for it. It's not out yet. But basically, the short version is I left Disney Feature Animation, as you probably calculated, over 20 years ago. So I had started teaching at Art Center College of Design, my alma mater, 2 years before leaving Disney because I had a sabbatical written into my contract. And I had a house and I had a mortgage. So I wanted a little, bread and butter money during the time off. So I had started teaching at my alma mater. It became a huge entertainment track that's one of the top ones in the world now. But basically, somewhere in there, when I left Disney, it was a choice, but we called it mutual separation. Because you may have heard, it sounds like you're, somewhat of an animation fan. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you may remember the axe kind of fell at one point. 300 people were laid off at one time in my workplace. And then Paris, they couldn't close down because it's impossible to fire people in France. But the Florida studio was closed down. Everything was going CG or, computer generated. And so everything was changing and they just started laying people off. Well, a lot of us jumped ship and took that opportunity to do other things we had always wanted to do, like gallery painting, or in my case, live action filmmaking. So I had written a little screenplay and I just hit the ground running, went to New York Film Academy, spent my own money on my first film, which they say not to do, and started entering films into festivals, getting some distribution in short film programs, things like that, because they were all short films, and winning awards. And that sort of led to my writing. So I just woke up one day and thought, I have 2 original screenplay credits. I wasn't even sort of aiming for that, but because I considered myself an auteur, a writer, I was only writing the films in order to make them. But I did realize that writing resume is something people work long and hard for. I need to put that on the front burner. So to really condense it, I wrote my first young adult fantasy novel for my niece. That found publication with Twilight Times. And then the sequel came out in 2016. So just kind of slowly I started, winning awards yet again. And for good or bad, that encouraged me because I'm certainly not, what's her name from Harry Potter? J.K. Rowling's. I don't have her paycheck, but it's kept me going, and that's for good or bad. But I get just enough accolades and win just enough awards, and I get included in just enough anthologies and collections to keep me going and keep me bored. So the thing is, I get published quite a bit, actually, and I win awards, but I don't have an agent. And so if anyone out there, is interested in the LGBTQ content, I'm actively seeking an agent. But anyway, The Seeker is something that has not yet found publication. It's a little bit of a tough sell, and it's a little bit of a genre blend, they call it, so it might be a little hard to market. And that's kind of why I wanted to talk about it. A lot of my work is not gay enough for certain readerships, and yet it's problematic for others if it has a gay protagonist. So The Seeker, simply put, is visionary fiction meets mythic fiction. So if anybody out there knows or has read Madeline Miller's Cirque or The Song of Achilles, it's kind of that meets The Alchemist. And The Alchemist by Paul Coelho would be the quintessence of what's called visionary fiction. So anyway, that's it. It's a retelling of Icarus with the gay protagonist and a gay love story.
Well, and while we're on that subject of if anybody knows an agent, how do they connect with you? If they're an agent and they want to work with you, or just in general to learn and to connect with you?
Well, again, if there's time, I'll give you a little more info on The Seeker, and I'll give a synopsis, because that would be wonderful. I'm actively querying on a day. All writers know you just query night and day, and you send out proposals. And, so I'm doing that, but the agent thing has been evasive, and all my publications I've done on my own. So the seeker, yes, I would love that. They can contact me through my website, which is dominickdomingo.com. It's very bare bones, but you'll notice if you visit, it has links to all the other good stuff. So my online portfolio with all the Disney stuff, all those films I mentioned, that link is on there, and that's an online portfolio. Anyway, you can email me through the website. It's basically dominick@dominickdomingo.com.
Perfect. Would you do me a favor and maybe read a little bit from The Seeker?
Is there time? Yeah, I would
There's
love to.
plenty of time.
You know, it's very awkward to try to impart principles of any kind, spiritual principles, or simply put, to have any agenda at all. It's very awkward. So I always find narratives that are trying to impart a message that's didactic very awkward. So I do love The Alchemist. One doesn't really know, because it's been translated so much, how the original, came across. But I think it still has yet to be done correctly, this whole genre of visionary fiction. So I'm hoping to be the first one to, have a real earnest narrative with literary value and artistic integrity, where any agenda is sort of secondary. Okay, so this is the very opening. There's a there's a preface that I won't share. Chapter 1. I don't need these. I have but one memory of my mother. It's fog-shrouded and vague, diffused about the edges like an unfinished fresco on chipping plaster. The image visits me still, in the faded tableau on 5. A single white cloud sails by like a lonely ship in a vast sea. My mother is with me, laughing with her toes in the sand. It's just her and I. A stolen moment marks the rare occasion my father has given her leave without chaperone. Her golden locks flutter in the breeze, the few that have escaped her woolen scarf. All at once, she's standing. She says she wants to feel the tide between her toes. She leaves her shoes on our blanket and romps down the steady grade to the margin of darkened, compact sand slick with reflections. I feel safe. It's just her and I, my father's ill temper nowhere in the vicinity to dampen our spirits. I lay back on the warm cotton blanket, fired up by the sun. It's warm on my belly, but a subtle breeze tempers its wrath, forging tiny bumps. Her song comes to me amid the crashing waves and whistling wind, a lullaby. Her rich velvet tones mingle with the song of the sea, overtaking it entirely. She's singing for me alone, I know, the way only a mother can sing to her son. The soothing alto of her maternal voice soars with the enchanting melody, one I've never heard but which rings as familiar and comforting as her touch. Moments pass, or an eternity. When I start awake, bolting upright, she's nowhere to be seen. Her shoes are still beside me on the woven blanket. And then I spot her on the crest of the neighboring dune. She's facing northward up the coast, gazing off at the point where the road out of Adamus merges with heaven. Her woolen scarf hangs loosely in her grasp. Strands of honey-laden hair float on the wind, scattering golden light. For a split second, she turns over one shoulder and her eyes lock with mine. The inscrutable look in them haunts me to this day, something between profound regret and the elation of one standing on the brink of freedom. And then she dashes beyond the bone-white hill crest and is gone. I'll leave it at that since we're limited on time. Basically, he learns much later that she was a goddess, and he didn't know he was a demigod. And there are very good reasons that basically she split, and he never saw her again. And I'll leave it at that. The rest is sort of a parable for reconnecting with our core essence, and I use the code word divinity for our spiritual essence. So the whole thing is kind of an odyssey to find his long-lost mother, which is code for his divinity.
That's beautiful. You can read the rest when he gets an agent, and it's published right after this program airs, I promise. I wanted to also talk about your animated short, Home, which is very exciting, and I know you're very excited about it, and reading about it makes me excited, so I want to talk about it.
Yeah, well, hopefully this will just be a teaser, and I'll be back on at some point with more to show. I kind of said it's a little premature to show anything yet, but yeah, in all of this, and I guess the reason I put the LGBTQ slant to my work on the front burner is, again, I think we were talking in the pre-interview, I watched Coming Out Colton recently, which is controversial, but I think everybody's got a coming out story, and this is as valid as any other So it really just put me in touch with that period of time and those awkward conversations and, you know, how painful that whole impasse can be. And in all of it, Sarah Tuaolo, if anybody knows him, the NFL player that came out literally in 2002 now, I think. Really early on, he's one of now 3, I think, NFL players that have come out in the media and publicly. Anyway, he did a segment on coming out Colton that I found really beautiful. And he sort of, I keep using this word spiritual, and I don't want to freak anybody out, but he just brought a real soulful flavor to the proceedings. And I was inspired by it. And believe it or not, we just got in touch through social media, and he's my buddy now. So in all of it, I decided to lend my animation background to his beautiful singing songwriting talent. Some of you may know he was on The Voice. I guess Blake Shelton was his coach, who's on The Voice. And then as a result of that, he was on Ellen, he's been on Oprah, and that sort of brought more attention to him. He's very active in the gay community with all LGBTQ2+ issues, like tolerance for, visibility, representation, inclusion, all of that, but specifically bullying. And within professional sports, he's very passionate about that. And I think we can all remember those coaches in high school who allowed the word fag and gay and all these derogatory terms to just fly around the locker room. And I love the work he's doing combating that, because being permissive or turning the other cheek is not the answer. So anyway, I was just kind of re-enlivened to revisit that period of my own past. And anyway, Sarah and I have collaborated. He wrote a beautiful short song called Home to the ukulele, because he's Samoan but raised in Hawaii. So he kind of went back to his roots and wrote a really beautiful song about going back home to Hawaii. Now, again, I use that as code for returning to our core essence, our spiritual, our fundamental spiritual self. So it's it's shaping up to be a really beautiful short film that will probably do the festival circuit. And who knows beyond that, what it'll turn into. Could be a series, hint. But I'll keep you posted. And we talked about having Sarah on, and that is a definite possibility. And I'd love to show a clip next time I'm on, because it'll be further along.
Please come back and talk about that. If your job is to create, what do you do creatively for yourself?
Well, everything I do, I would say at Disney, I had no delusions. I wasn't getting my personal jollies. I was not telling my own stories. So I never had any delusions about that. I was working on Walt's vision, not mine. It was a brand, obviously, a very corporate brand with stockholders to please and a look to fulfill. But I think you hinted at this earlier. I was just learning and growing so much that I hadn't really smelled the call of the wild to move on quite yet. So I had no delusions. I wasn't telling my stories. It was satisfying. It paid the bills, bought that house, which is now gone. But it made for a really wonderful period of time in my 20s. But absolutely, I hit that point where I was ready to tell my own stories. And what I didn't include earlier is when I started making live action films, yes, the axe was falling, but there are no mistakes. It sounds a little cliche, but in the spiritual journey, it of course coincided with my smelling the call of the wild and really wanting to tell my own stories. So, very short version, I had been through a breakup. I had that sabbatical that I mentioned, and I was trying to put my children's book at the time out into the universe, and the art director that had invited me to pitch to him just kind of disappeared. And there was no internet back then, so I couldn't track him down and find out what imprint he landed at. So toward the end of my year off, I thought, shit, I better do something with my sabbatical here, because that didn't happen. And I had been through a breakup. So I had, what they call blank page syndrome or empty canvas syndrome, and I just couldn't create, because actually my muse was the thing that was at odds with my earthly connections, my relationships. So I wrote a screenplay about the broken heart, and it was very raw. And actor Chad Allen, if anyone knows him, he's very active in the gay community. Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, he was one of the few that came out early on as well. I did a reading with him, and all the actors really said, man, this is so raw. I rarely see writing like this. So again, for good or bad, it encouraged me. And I was chomping at the bit to make that film. So my final year at Disney after the sabbatical, I was just ready to get out there. So I just want to say, creativity has saved my life many times. And I think during COVID, we all have been creating like mad people, right? Because it is cathartic. And I do think, ideally, it comes full circle and then provides transformation and redemption for the masses. So anyway, it was no question for me. And going back to your question, everything I do is somewhat for me, but with hopefully some redemption that I'm offering to the collective.
Yeah, I love that. We've seen throughout this interview a lot of the stills that you shared with us of the work you've done, but I want to show the Wellington clip because it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. So can we talk about that and tell everybody what that is?
So simply put, it's basically a quirky, as you'll see from the clip, hopefully, a quirky series based on a family that moves into an old mansion. And it's actually based on a house on my block that was transplanted. A lot of mystery surrounding this house. And it's the type of house, as a kid, there was one on my block in Burbank where, of course, you look through the wrought iron gate and you project on it and you make up stories about it and it's haunted. And somebody was killed in that upper gable and you just project stories onto it, or those with active imaginations do. So it's about that one house on your block that just is begging for backstories, accurate or not. And so this family called the Wellingtons move in to a mansion whose roots are very mysterious in Wellington, New Zealand, hence the title, The Wellingtons of Wellington. And they immediately just become, these oddballs that live in the house that everybody gossips about. And it's about how he discovers a whole multiverse. The kid, by the way, an 8-year-old kid, Jack, discovers a multiverse in the dumbwaiters in the walls of that cottage. He learns more and more about its past as an orphanage, and he, in that alternate realm, learns the skills that he, of course, brings back to daily life in order to cope, because he's bullied for being that odd, eccentric family.
Just to be in your brain for half a day would be so exciting to me. I love this.
Careful what you ask for.
Yeah. All right, take a look at the clip.
In Wellington, New Zealand, a great Victorian cottage of unknown origins towers over a sea of suburban rooftops. According to lore, it's remained empty for half a century. Until, that is, a peculiar family moved in. They're known as the Wellingtons.
I love it. It's one of those things where I'm like, well, now what? 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's very minimal.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said 30 seconds. I want an entire series of this because it just looks so cute and so different.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, that's what a sizzle piece they call it, or that's what it should be. It should intrigue and you should want more.
Well, I
very
hope
minimal.
I love it. I hope you are able to come back again and talk about all the projects that you have going on as they come out, because you're very talented, and I appreciate you being on the show. We'll be right back after this, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Hi, Wendy of The Right Fit. Let's talk about hair today. And if you find that you get a little bored with your hairstyle, you would be amazed how something as simple as getting an inch or two cut off the length, adding some long layers, changing up the color with some highlights or lowlights, anything that simple can make you feel like a brand new person and give you a big old self-esteem boost. So talk to your hairstylist. They are the expert and they can help you come up with a great plan for a simple refresh. Thanks for listening and watching, everyone. You can reach me at wendy@therightfit.net or go to therightfit.net.
Wouldn't it be great if your business could have a commercial on TV? Now it can. Secure your Season 5 sponsorship by visiting richardwilmore.com. Advertise on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire TV by sponsoring The Richard Wilmore Show. Become a sponsor today. Go to richardwilmore.com now.
It's the Richard Wilmore Show.